Alright, so I was scrolling on Reddit just like everybody else. Yeah, right? You guys also scroll on Reddit, right? You have to be on Reddit. Jokes aside, I kind of wanted to talk about the legendary drop rate. In this thread on Reddit, they were talking about how the loot system was working on previous Borderlands compared to Borderlands 4 and everybody's like hopes and thoughts on the loot system. And I saw a lot of mixed opinions on it. So, which is kind of why I wanted to make this little rant on YouTube. So let me know your thoughts below. Just to give a verbatim of what they said on that thread. Some of the opinions were that the Borderlands 1 and 2 drops were completely fine and normal, which I agree with. I feel like Borderlands 1 and 2 had the best drop rates. You know, it made them feel like they're a rarity. I mean, they're legendaries, right? They're the best gear in the game. They make your life so much easier when doing your playthroughs. So personally, I feel like Borderlands 1 and 2's rarity drops are completely fine. And you don't need legendaries to beat the game or any playthrough that you play in any Borderlands. You know, you can beat it with the white rarity, with the blue rarity, with the purple rarity. You don't need to have legendaries. So in terms of beating the game, I mean, you're set on whatever loot you have. I mean, as long as you're good at the game, you hit your shots. It doesn't really matter what weapon you use. And given that you're going to have a lot of loot drops, I promise you, you won't always have white weapons in your inventory. You'll most likely end up having at least blue or purple. So that's more than doable to beat the playthrough. And something else I saw on that Reddit thread was that there are more parts on Borderlands 4 weapons than there have been in the past, right? So the loot system's about to get more complex. You know, I believe there are like 6 different manufacturers now. Or not different, but 4 different ones with 2 new ones, I believe. So there's going to be a lot of different parts in your weapons now. And if you don't know how parts work in the Borderlands, it's basically just the type of modifier you get on your weapon. So it might have faster fire rate, more damage, less recoil, stuff like that. So with more parts in Borderlands 4, to get that perfect weapon that you want, it's gonna be a while, right, to farm that weapon. Which in my opinion, I feel like even though there are gonna be more parts, I feel like it's completely fine. In my opinion, you don't have to have the best parts. Just like I said, you didn't have to have the legendaries to even beat the game. You don't need to have the best parts on that legendary. With whatever version of that weapon that you got, I feel like you'll be content with it. Even if it's the worst version, I feel like you'll be completely fine with beating the game and pretty much kicking ass on any boss just having that legendary. To me, in my opinion, having the best parts is more of an end game type of thing. I mean, you're just practically tuning your build to be the best that it can. And I feel like that's just more end game content to me than it would be for the playthroughs. So usually at that point, people will end up dropping the game after they finish the playthrough and play something else. Or if you're a more hardcore fan, then you'll keep playing and you'll probably be one of those people who will be grinding to get those perfect parts. And in my opinion, I feel like Gearbox should stick with Borderlands 1 and 2's drop rates. You know, they're pretty rare compared to Borderlands 3. I mean, Borderlands 3's drop rate, you know, was abysmal. You know, it was so easy to get legendaries. Like, it didn't really feel like a legendary at that point. It just felt like I was getting a white weapon. And so the people that go back and start doing the end game stuff and, you know, fine tune their builds to get the perfect parts on their weapons, you know, it'll give them more content to play through. They'll get to kill more time, which I feel like it's good, right? You're playing, allegedly the game will be $80, you know, and I want to get my playing time from that $80. Personally, don't think Borderlands is worth $80, but if I do have to end up paying $80, I want at least 1,000 hours on the game. So I'm completely fine with keeping the same rarity drops rates from previous Borderlands, even if there are more parts. I mean, I'm completely fine with that. And I feel like something that people don't really take into account is that with this new Borderlands, you can manually reset the bosses. In the background, I have gameplay of me just grinding for different types of legendaries that I wanted to use. And if you want to count it to yourself, it takes a while for me to just do one run for that one chance to get that legendary from that specific boss. But with Borderlands 4, you can manually reset the bosses now, which you don't have to save and quit or run to that place, I'm assuming. So you cut down the amount of time just for you to even get to the boss. So let's say you're given an hour to farm a certain legendary in Borderlands 1 and 2 compared to 4. Statistically speaking, you're going to get more legendaries on Borderlands 4 just because of the fact that you're not going to spend a whole minute just to get to the fucking boss. So you have a more likelihood of getting that legendary that you were grinding for. And something else I saw on that thread was that people wanted to re-roll their legendaries to get the perfect parts, which in my opinion, I highly disagree with that being an actual thing. I feel like the reroll system will just kind of mess up the game for me. You know, it makes the whole farming process useless. Like I said, you can manually reset the bosses. So given with that, you're gonna have way more time to get the legendaries or more attempts to get the legendaries in a short time frame. So when you get that drop and then you can just re-roll your way to the best one, it kind of defeats the purpose of farming in my opinion. I mean, at that point, if you have the re-rolls, might as well just keep the Borderlands 3 drop rates, because I mean there is no point in farming if I'm just gonna be able to reroll it to being the perfect weapon. And I feel like people will exploit this because they'll just get the early legendaries, reroll them until eventually they get the best one, and they kind of just ease through the playthrough. And I feel like, in my opinion, there should be some sort of challenge to the playthrough. I feel like that makes it more memorable. You know, you actually get your money's worth. If the game was made to be really easy to beat, then I feel like it's really counterproductive to even playing the game, in my opinion. And I feel like this also defeats the purpose if Gearbox decides to add the ultimate True Vault Hunter mode, the True Vault Hunter mode, all those different difficulties, the OP8, 7, you know, all those type of difficulty modifiers. I feel like having the rerolls just kind of defeats the purpose, right? If I'm already starting those playthroughs with the best gear, I feel like I'm just gonna ease through the bosses and the whole playthrough, and it just makes the whole playthrough pointless. I guess to recap my opinions on this, and from what that thread said, Borderlands 1 and 2 drop rates were fine, even if Borderlands 4 has more parts. The fact that we can manually reset the boss, you know, you'll have way more attempts to even get the legendary, even if there are different parts. Even if there are many different parts, you know, you'll be fine with whatever version of the weapon you get. Again, I feel like getting the perfect weapon is more of an end game thing. You know, it gives me more time to appreciate the game. You know, you're gonna spend a lot of time with the bosses since it's dedicated drops again. And I feel like the game will become more overall memorable because you're just gonna be killing the same boss like 30 million times to get that perfect weapon. And I feel like that's a good thing, right? I mean, in my opinion, I would grind a lot of Savage Lee, for example. He's very memorable because he drops the Dupa, one of the best weapons in the game, and he wasn't even the boss, right? I would always farm him because I wanted to kind of have an easy playthrough, and I would be fine with whatever version I got usually. And then once I reached level 80, then I would go farm him for the Dupa with the perfect parts, and I would be that. And the only reason he's memorable is because it took me so many attempts to get that perfect Dupa. But if you abstract that away with the reroll system, like people were suggesting on the thread, then I feel like all the bosses, all that would just become less memorable, and I feel like people would just forget the bosses and not make it a memorable game like the first and second one were. But yeah, let me know your thoughts below. I kind of just want to go in a little rant. I know it's a little short video, but I generally don't want Gearbox to make it so easy to get legendaries again, even with the dedicated drops. I feel like that's good enough. I feel like the rarity drop rate in Borderlands 1 and 2 is completely fine again. But yeah, let me know your opinions below, or how you guys would go about the drop rates and how everything would work with the loot system. But yeah, so hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.